Hello, my friends. Welcome to Nostalgia Trap. My name is David Parsons. This is part 3 of the history of America in 6 cars. So get your engines running. I swear I will try to stay away from the easy puns and dad jokes, etc. But it's really hard, honestly. And I think that's part of what I wanted to get at when I first thought of doing a series of podcasts on the history of cars and car culture in America, is how deeply written into our everyday language those car metaphors are. They're everywhere, and ever since I started thinking about cars for this series, I'm seeing them more and more. So I'm going to just not comment on them. I'm not going to do the whole lame, like, pun not intended thing. It's just going to happen, and we're going to move on from it. You're going to hear a lot of dumb car metaphors and jokes as we proceed. Okay, so last time we were talking about the Volkswagen Beetle coming in as a sort of surprising entry in the history of American cars. It's not an American car, but it has a particularly American history. So if you want to go back to part 2, you can hear about how the Volkswagen Beetle was conceived as a project of the Nazi government in Germany in the 1930s, and how, in a surprising turn of events, it became, in the years after the war, a car associated with the American counterculture and hippies. And a lot of that is due to marketing and the sort of wizards of advertising that became central to American life, or at least shaping American life, in the 1950s and 60s, all that Mad Men stuff. So go back if you want to hear about the Volkswagen saga, but we're kind of jumping in the middle of that story because the Volkswagen Beetle creates a kind of crisis for American automakers as they're thinking, wow, there is a car that's sort of surprising us with its popularity. We're making like giant tail fin cars for people that are looking for luxury vehicles, suburban moms and dads that want to spend a chunk of money on a nice, big, giant car that looks like a B-52 bomber with tits on it. So that's what we talked about last time. Well, the Beetle is not that. The Beetle is something different, and it's interesting, and I think it's part of the crisis of American capitalism in the 60s, is figuring out what people really want beyond just their sort of buying things that match their economic class. And what I mean by that is that people were buying Volkswagen Beetles that could afford much bigger cars. It wasn't just like, oh, I'm a poor person, so I'll drive a Beetle because it's all I can afford. The Beetle was cool. It had cachet. It had a kind of like hip aesthetic and hip kind of vibe in the culture, and people wanted that. And even if they had a lot of money, they wanted that. So that's why it's important that like people like John Lennon, Paul Newman, these other celebrities are driving Volkswagen Beetles in the 60s, because car companies are like, fuck, like those guys could afford like to drive the most ostentatious luxury vehicles. They're celebrities. They're rich movie stars. What is happening? Why are they driving the Beetle? So that's going to make car companies realize they need something more than just like selling to rich guys or selling to poor guys. There's something like to do with hipness. There's something to do with like a car being cool or stylish. In other words, people will buy something that's not really practical, in part because they just want it. That's going to be something that the companies are going to try very hard with all their market research to figure out, and try and figure out what American consumers want that goes beyond just the class stuff. So that's a really tricky thing to navigate in the 1960s, because the 1960s are legendary for a lot of reasons, but one of the things they're most famous for is the sort of social and cultural turbulence. Things are moving very quickly. It's not clear what this new giant population of young people actually wants. Are they part of the system? Do they want to tear the system down? Who are they? And that quest to figure out who the new generation of consumers are and what they want is the subject of today's episode.